tournament poker project from Essex. My name's Jon.
And I'm the Tain.
And we are two recreational poker players, and this is our journey to get great at poker and be able to go and play in the World Series of Poker and compete and feel like we earned our place to be there. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, did I throw you with becoming the Tain? I thought I'd have a name change ready for breaking into the big time. I thought Tain is a bit, people think I'm Train, whereas if I'm the Tain, it might it's got a bit more vocalization where you can.
Yeah, I think that's really good. That's a good upgrade. The Tain.
And then people will just call me the Train anyway, and I'll just get used to it, and they'll think it's because I'm a large husky man that represents a train rather than it just be a part of my first name. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, the Tain. I'm gonna have my name
next week I'll come prepared with an upgrade to Jon.
The Jonathan. Naming lights, Jon. No, it's got to be
Jono fantastic.
Jono fantastic.
Jon, maybe Jon. I'll just have to own Jon. Jon will be. It's a very common name, but maybe that I'll be the one when people say Jon. Oh, what, the famous poker player Jon? No, Thingy's uncle Jon. Oh, right, that Jon. I don't know. Maybe that's too big a goal. Anyway, we're not professional poker players. We are. This is pretty near the start of our journey. Although we are getting better, aren't we? We've learned a bit of theory now. Where are you up to in your journey? Where would you say you are with the learning?
I think I'm well versed in the absolute basics. That doesn't mean that I'm applying very well, because I know a little bit about lots of things rather than a lot of things about a little bit. But it's not a problem, because I can now feel that my study sessions and my practice sessions are valuable. Like beforehand, say 6 months ago, I sat down and I said, I'm going to play poker, but I'm going to play 25-cent sit and goes, and I'm going to try to play suited connectors. I want to really feel how it what it feels like to play suited connectors. And I sat down and I weren't sure. And I'm like, what am I meant to do here? If I'm practicing, do I play them properly, which is probably to fold them half the time, or do I raise every hand and see how it reacts, or do I call, hoping to see if I didn't know what I was doing. Whereas now, like, I've been trying to practice free betting, and not specifically going out there and free betting everything, but looking for my free bets, looking when I've got a hand that balances, so I've got a hand like king queen off that I'm free betting, but I'm happy to fold to a 4-bet because it's from the under the gun player, and I'm balancing that with my ace 10 of hearts, for instance, where even if the under the gun player 4-bets me, I'm willing to jam it, because we're only playing 30 deep and I'm happy to jam at that point. So that's what I'm trying to do, and it means that I'm not manufacturing these spots, so they're not as frequent as I'd like, but because I'm aware of them and I know hopefully I know a bit better what I'm doing, so now I'm practicing them, my free bet range is good. It's not well constructed, but it's now profitable, and I am doing 3-bets and 4-bets where I wouldn't. So anyway, yeah, very long-winded way of saying it's going all right. How's your doing?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not on the 3-bets thing, but I'm excited to get there. I feel like I learned a lot, loads and loads of stuff about poker, but none of it really connected. And then we read the books, didn't we? I read Andrew Brokos's Play Optimal Poker, and you read a couple of similar kind of books on the theory. So I feel like I've finally understood what theory is, and that was a couple of months ago now. And that was a great feeling. It was like, wow, this is the start of something. I know what the theory is. I understand this theory of poker. And I've kind of been happily playing, and actually I've had some all right results, but then it's dipped back down again. And then I realised last week I haven't actually learned the pre-flop charts. So it's one thing knowing what the theory is and kind of having an understanding of that, and knowing how to play a condensed range versus a polarized range and understanding the theory, but but applying that and actually going, right, okay, so how do I have an unexploitable, opening range or free betting range? And I think it's something that I've just been putting off for a long time, and that is actually just sitting down and learning and memorizing all of the opening charts for different stack depths, and then just going through the motions and just trying to memorize the whole lot, so in any situation I know what the GTO strategy is. Not that I just want to play like that, obviously, like we all know that you learn it so then you can become an exploitative player, but I don't feel like I can do that until I've done this hard step of memorizing and learning these charts, at least to some degree. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to memorize every single part of them, but what I've done this last few days is found my way of learning it. So I started looking at it at the start of the week or at the weekend and was like, right, how do I actually learn these charts? How am I going to memorize so many different positions and stack depths? And you've got like a chart of all these hands for all these positions, all these stack depths, and it just seems incredibly hard. But I found my way. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I've got my spreadsheet which basically says what's the lowest offsuit card do I for that position and that stack depth. What's the lowest suited card, and then I've ended up with like 45 bits of data for all of the opening cards to use, and I've managed to memorize that. So I've been testing myself a few times a day, and then I've just started introducing, all right, that's the general kind of offsuit card and suited cards, and anything up of that's what I've learned. But then I've needed to start looking at, all right, but what aces do I play, because there's obviously usually more aces that you play than the others, and then which aces I think it's just in the lower stack depths you jam from what positions and just go all in. And so I've just studied that onto the chart today, and I haven't learned them yet, but I'm consistently getting 45 out of 45 correct on the data points for the opening, the bits I've learned so far. So really, really long-winded. I just wanted to be more long-winded than you, Tain, so I just thought I'd really ramble on there. But yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm memorizing GTO charts. I'm memorizing the charts, and yeah, I think I've just been putting it off, and it's a bit silly really, because it's one thing knowing the theory, but you also need to know, well, all right, what are the GTO opening ranges and calling ranges and opening, and I know they can change a little bit, and they're not always the same for everybody, but you still got to learn a good general one, haven't you?
Yeah, like we watch a lot of videos, we listen to podcasts, and some of them really go into depth about hero calls on the river and how to play turns properly. But the truth is that you might see a river, 1 in 5, maybe 1 in 10 hands, and probably less than that for hands that you're in. But you see a flop, not a flop, you see pre-flop every single hand. That's 100% of your game. So get that right, because every decision, no matter how marginally bad that decision might have been, it then compounds multiplied. I mean, it is compound interest on a mistake. So a mistake that's worth one big blind bad is worth two on the flop, 4 on the river turn, 8 on the river. Or it could be even more than that. It could be multipliers of that rather than just additions.
And it's been fun. Like, it's been really fun. Like, because I've been obviously applying it to my game when I'm playing now. I'm like, right, every hand I'm like, right, what's my range here? Okay, and then there's hands coming up like, oh my god, yeah, I've got to open with this. Like I've got a suited 8 from this certain position. I'm actually going to play that. I've got like Jack 8. Let's play it. When I maybe wouldn't have before. And then you get to the flop, and then it's like, holy shit, like, what do I do now? So there's a lot more to learn, but
mate,
it's a starting point.
One of the things that I love about GTO and about the game today, do you remember when we were first learning 15 odd years ago, maybe more than that? It used to be the thing everyone said was that why do people care so much about suited cards? It only adds 1 to 2% onto your likelihood of winning, or like your expected value. Like it didn't add very much on, so people didn't give any shits about it, because that was back in the day where ranges weren't a thing, and range v range and GTO were just not even conceived really. People knew that they could exist in some dream world, but no one actually thought of it might be a place that it's applied to our game. But that was it. People disregarded it. They'd play 6-7 offsuit, you know, almost the same as 6-7 suited. And now GTO and solvers love suited cards, like they love them
Why
with
do
all
they
their
love them
heart.
so
They want to
much?
marry
Though?
them.
Why do they love them so much? If we discovered something about the maths?
Yeah, so it's not necessarily about, so the way I read it isn't that they realize their equity, even though they do. It's that they give so many more opportunities to yield a better result in your favor. So if you've got suited cards that also connect, so you can get straights and flushes.
Oh, so
It
it's like it's almost like the bluffing opportunities increase, but
yeah,
with the potential to. So you've almost got, yeah, you're almost increasing your fold. You know, getting folds, and which is obviously a profitable thing. And if you can do that, knowing that actually your backdoor flush might come in, then yeah, okay,
yeah,
that makes
it's
sense.
just real good stuff. Yeah, it realizes it over realizes its equity in certain, especially for certain suited cards that kind of had no place being there. You know, like maybe Queen 3 suited might be a no go, but now we've got better understanding of game theory and optimal play. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
mate.
so much better. Just as a quick thing, I know you're eager to do the hand. One thing you did say that I kind of keep wanting to get off my chest. You know, you mentioned about, you know, we learn GTA to play exploitatively, right?
GTA, what
GTA, you
grand?
play Grand Theft Auto to play exploitatively,
Yeah,
because if you just stand there, you're gonna get shot or run over. But I've shared hands in places, and I've tried to talk to people about it, and I've tried to elicit kind of advice where I've said I want to practice game theory, and literally every time I get run over with people saying you don't want to practice game theory, you want to play exploitative. Game theory is just the baseline, and it bothers me because I don't think game theory means to me what it means to other people.
right.
Like other people see it as kind of like the perfect baseline. You know, it's unexploitable, but it's also unachievable, and it's too complex, and it's unnecessary as well. It's you're not optimizing your return. But for me, even though that's true, and I don't intend on playing game theory, I need to understand every principle, because for me it helps rationalize my emotions within the game. So I think I sent a text to you the other day where if I free bet someone and they four bet me, my feeling is that I was wrong to free bet. So I'd be, oh, I've either made a mistake and I free bet someone who I thought was weak and would fold, or I've made a mistake. I've walked into a big hand, or there was something wrong with my free bet, or my free bet was good,
Yeah,
but it weren't the right move. But then game theory says no, actually you have to have hands that you free bet to fold like that. There, if you actually never have hands that free bet and fold, it doesn't work, because you'll be easily exploitable, because everyone will either four bet you or never four bet you, because you've either got hands that you never fold in, or you're never free betting because nothing's strong enough.
I see. So they'll only ever four bet you when they've got a pair of aces in the hole, or they'll just fold, and then your free bets are. I don't know though. I suppose then you're just not free betting often enough, and then people will just know to get out of the way. So then you'll end up never playing. A, you never get to the flop with really good cards unless you're beaten by a pair of aces or something.
Yeah, but it's the idea that if you need to have hands that aren't strong enough to carry on. Like it's an essential part of the block that is your range. That because it's never a mistake. It's important that people see that you've got cards in your range that you're willing to free bet and fold, so that when you four bet, it actually has value. And also, so when you free bet in the first place, they know that you are willing to fold some of them, so that they'll raise you thinking, well, he folded the last 2 free bets, and then all of a sudden you're shoving all in, and then it probably gives them a bit of doubt. Oh, right, is he doing that because I've 4-bet him twice? Oh, cool, I'll call it. And it's like, well, actually, no, this was in my 5-bet range, which is my aces. So well done. You've just called my shove, and fit perfectly into what. But it's
That
the
makes a lot of
perfectness
sense.
of it.
Yeah, that
And
makes a lot of sense. And
that,
it's this equilibrium, isn't it? It's this
yeah,
it's this
but
forcing people to play back, and yeah, if you're
but
balanced.
it's that ADHD, managing my emotions and understanding that it's all part of the beautiful maths. It's not, I played that
Mm.
wrong. Like
Okay.
I can lose 20 hands in a row or fold in bad places, but it actually is perfect because it has to be, that's how it should be. You know what I mean? That's what GTO is. That
Yeah, man.
you just take it. There is no variance per se because it's perfectly balanced. And if that means sometimes you go 20, 50, 80 hands where you earn 0, it's difficult to overcome that until you fully understand
Yeah.
the full equilibrium and how it works and why it works.
And
So
so then
that
finding peace with that, isn't it? That's what you're talking about with the mental game of it, is finding the peace with,
yeah,
I am playing correctly. It's just worked out that
yeah,
I've lost the last 20 hands,
and exactly that. So I had hands that I could free bet, but not from the under the gun position, or I was in the small blind and they folded, the big blind folded, so I didn't even get to, properly get in there with a re-raise. So yeah, with the
Yeah.
free, just little bits like that, and that's just, so I earned almost nothing, just a big blind out of it. But
Yeah.
in any other, if that was middle position, I'm free betting and enjoying it. But that's what I was saying. That's why I want to practice it, because it isn't perfect in my mind yet. Even though obviously it's never going to be perfect. It's quite, it's too complex for that. But there's still big vacant gaps. Things like bet sizing are still
Yeah.
way off. I'm really, really badly off of my bet sizing.
Yeah.
And I need to understand that so I can fully rationalize the emotions that come with bet sizing. But it's good. It means that I don't aggressively chase people and things like that, even though I almost caught myself doing it the other day.
Yeah, I've with bet sizing, like I know a little bit about it. It's like when it comes to 3-betting, if you're 3-betting from if you're 3-betting someone that will have position on you after the flop, then you should 3-bet a bit bigger in relation to their bet. And if you're betting someone that after the flop you'll have position on, then you actually bet a bit smaller. And it's just simply to do with, if you've got the position, you kind of want a few more calls from the out of position 3-bet caller, who's the person who calls your 3-bet, as opposed to if you're going to be out of position against them, it's less favourable. So do a bit of a bigger 3-bet, and then you get a couple more folds, and you're not going to be in a pot quite as often. So I know some kind of, it's another one of these things, Tain. It's like all of these, sorry, the Tain. It's like a lot of these little snippets of information. I've got loads of them in there, and they pop up in games from time to time, and I'll remember them. And I'm just hoping that one day I'll just know everything, and I'll just know all of the opening ranges, when to 3-bet, when to call a 3-bet, when to 4-bet, the bet size to make on a particular flop texture. Do I barrel the turn, and just all of it. I just want to master the game. I just want to be king of poker.
Yeah, Jon.
The Jon.
John. No,
Yeah.
that's the toilet,
Okay.
John. I'm
Oh,
pretty
right.
sure. Yeah, you can
The
to the
Jon.
John.
The
Yeah,
Jon. Yeah.
you can be the toilet if you want.
The toilet. Yeah.
You
It sounds like I'm really crap at poker, doesn't it? I suppose that's more
but
fitting of me now. The
well,
Jon.
people.
And then
Well,
I'll
are you hoovering up chips like you'd hoover up someone's excrement, or are people just shitting in you?
Oh, right. That is this. There's people listening to this pod, and that's disgusting.
You're the one who said the John. Anywho,
All
the Tain has
right.
spoken.
All right. On that note, should we jump into a hand?
We should. Let's do it.
Okay.
It looks pretty good.
So, all right. So this is an ACR tournament. So the field's a little bit good on here, or better than PokerStars, a bit harder than PokerStars, I find. I think we are 4 tables left. So we're not quite in the money yet. I think we're 10 or so hands away from the money, 10 or so players away from the money. We've got 104,000 in our stack, which is a bit above average, but there is one or two people on the table with more than us. One of the players has actually got 200,000. We are in the big blind position. The blinds are 1,500 and 3,000, and there is a 3,000 ante. That's the total ante. So the pot before any voluntary bets go in is 7,500. So our M value at this stage is somewhere around like 14 or something. So under the gun bets out for 6,900, so about 2.3 times the big blind open, and then the under the gun +2, which is better known as cut off hijack, the low jack flat calls for 6,900, and that player is the chip leader at the table with around 200,000 chips. And then it folds all the way around to us in the big blind, defending with 8 of clubs, 9 of clubs. What are your thoughts on actions here?
Sorry, just some bits of information. Do you have any reads on the players around you? In like, how's the table feeling? How's it playing? How's Mr. Left or Mrs. Left? Mrs. Left.
I'm afraid I don't have any information on that. This was an old hand, so I really can't remember what happens. I just checked if it definitely went to showdown by like looking away and just seeing if there are cards in my peripheral vision, and it's like, yeah, this went to showdown. So I don't even know if we win the hand or anything. So I certainly don't remember the players, I'm afraid.
Do you remember the buy-in? You might have said apologies.
Probably like $5 or $6.
Nice. Okay,
that's
cool. Because
that's what I'm playing.
Yeah, it's not often that you come up against, you know, an absolute megastar, and you can normally tell a mile off if someone's Splashy McDashy or Old Man Coffee. Okay, cool. So I'm happy. We're at the moment at this line level. It could be that whatever that is, just shy of 2.5 times the big blind is a fairly standard raise. They're under the gun, so smaller is better anyway for most purposes without something else. I've kind of been trying to tailor my raising. That's something else that I've now done, and I do it 100% of the time, and I might be wrong to do that, but if I'm early position, 2.1 times big blind, middle position 2.6, late position 3.1. And the 0.1, the only reason I do that is because it's less button. You know, it's quite obvious that I've got a button that I've adjusted so it works at, because I think when people see a slightly different amount, it changes their perspective of what the bet is. It makes it look a little bit more, even if it's only a tiny bit more.
Yeah,
it just puts a little edge in. It means that they might be a little less picky, or might give it a bit more credit. It might be that it's actually counterintuitive and I really should take that off because it's not helpful.
It might work. I'll be honest, when I see that, and I see obviously a lot of people do that, I always just think, oh, why are you raising that much for? Just do 2 or 3 times the big blind. But,
that's my
and I
button.
don't think much past that, but it's probably not the right way to look at it. There probably is, you know, a good reason to do these adjustments.
Yeah, no, so I have 2.1, 2.6, 3.1, and then I go 8, which is my, I'll work out my free bet from that 8. So 8's the, if I accidentally standard free bet, but I should be going higher or lower depending on position and where we're at. So I mean, obviously the under the gun, that's a good raise from under the gun. It is under the gun. It's been called, and I do love your hands. It's probably one of my favorites because I never get to play it. I swear to God, the last 100 times I've been dealt this, someone's pushed me off the pot. or it's got to a place where it's just done nothing for me. But I still love it. Still want to rub it, gently caress it.
Okay, well, remember they're my cards.
So they're your cards while you keep them. Well, you muck them, I'm taking them. So,
God, muck.
Without any better information, I wouldn't squeeze, because I don't think building the pot at this stage is valuable. And I don't know, a $5 game, it's really hit and miss whether people listen to squeezes or whether that just gets you into a 4-bet 5-bet all in situation very quickly. It's difficult. I'm not keen on building the pot, and to be fair, your hands plays well post flop, so a call in this position probably masks. You're calling with even the best of your range. I reckon you'd be calling with your aces, you'd be raising with most of your offsuit aces because you're out of position. Whereas your hand, if your hand hits really well, because you've had a pre-flop raise and a call from a relatively early position on the call as well, they're more likely to have, there's going to be a bit of bunching, so they're going to more likely have the aces, the kings, the queens. So if you hit and you hit strong, it doesn't matter as much that you're out of position, because you probably have got the best of it. But you are going to need to really slap that flop for that to be that confident with it. But again, it's just one of them. It's another reason why I personally can't see a raise in this position, and you're certainly not folding. 21.3k with just 3.9 to call. It's no brainer.
So it sounds like we're pretty settled on a check. I just want to sort of share my thoughts on your thoughts there. So you said about squeeze play. I completely agree. An under the gun raise open, an under the gun open, and then a low jack call, flat call, is pretty scary to be trying to squeeze. I think if you've got someone who raises from the hijack and the cut off flat calls, you might consider a squeeze there. But this just seems like, the under the gun open bet there at 6,900. That's scary enough. He's got something pretty good. Well, I suppose actually, now I've started studying the GTO charts, he could have anything down to a suited 9 or an offsuit queen. So actually, maybe not. Maybe I need to reconsider that. But it just feels a bit risky. I think you're generally gonna get a call off of one of them if you try to squeeze this. There's better spots to squeeze, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, if we imagine the middle position player weren't in this hand and your head's up against under the gun, it'd go completely on its head. I would consider a free bet in this position. I wouldn't say I'd do it 100%. There'll be a hell of a lot of calls in that range anyway, but there's a lot of raises, because then you are significantly out of position against only a single opponent. So you really need to hit that flop, because you need to be building it yourself. You haven't got an extra person who could be fluffing it up for you. Yeah. And then, I mean, the only thing I would say at this point is there is a fifth of your stack is the pot at the moment. So, I mean, that's not bad to win. You've only got 8, 9. So winning that right now would be useful, but I would need some real good information on the opponents that says they will fold to that kind of aggression. I've only just started using the HUD, but one of my HUD stats is how often they fold to free bet. And when I'm playing the crappy stakes, I'm playing really low stakes, so many people is 100%. So many. If I'm sitting at 9 people at a table, 6 of them are folding to free bets 100% of the time. So in this position, even if they've got a good, decent hand, just free bet real big and strong with abandon and just pick up an extra 50 stack. Even though you might think there's more value seeing a flop, your hand's just not strong enough. So that would be my only consideration, but I would need reads on that. I'd need to know that the players are of that way inclined. If they're completely unpositionally aware, they've got no clue whatsoever, if they're nits or they're the type that are just going to call anything anyway, then the squeeze is completely valueless. It's just pumping up a pot
Yeah, for nothing. So just to recap there then, there's currently just over 21,000 in the pot, and we just need 3,900 to call and defend. So we do that. We do complete, and we go 3-way to the flop, which comes down 8 of hearts, 2 of spades, 4 of clubs. So we're sitting here with 8 of clubs, 9 of clubs, we've got the backdoor flush, and we have top pair with a 9 kicker. So action is on us. What's your thoughts at this stage?
Just thinking through value, but very, very, very much only now. It's a really, really, really dynamic board. So whoever's winning at the moment, which is probably you or Mr. Overpair, if the person under the gun's got an overpair, which if they're playing tight, their under the gun raising range is really strong. So even though we've got top pair mid kicker, all the overpairs are still well within their range.
So why is it a dynamic board? Just talk me through that. This is a bit of a hole in my knowledge. Why is that a dynamic board?
This is me trying to talk through concepts that I know enough about to talk to kind of get by, but I don't know enough about to teach. So
Fair enough.
this board is rainbow and unconnected. Now, normally you'd say that's pretty dry because most people haven't hit it, but it's nothing to do with connecting to the flop. It's to do with how often is the action going to, how often is the player who is winning going to change over subsequent streets. And in this situation, it's almost guaranteed. I'd say pretty much every card that comes on the turn or river is going to change that board in one way or another. So if a 3 comes, the person with the ace has now got a gut shot. If any overcard to the 8 comes, the person who's playing with ace 9, ace 10, ace king, ace queen, yeah, I've also already now got. And because it changes so much, it's not beneficial to be value betting beyond this immediate street, especially when you are in your position of you've only got an 8 with a moderate kick. Yeah, you're a moderate kicker. You might be well behind already. So even though you're probably best off. I'm going to say there's, I don't know, 75% chance that you're winning here, and the 25% is obviously your overcards.
So if that flop was, say, king 8-4, that wouldn't be dynamic. That because got a high card on there already.
It would be less dynamic, yeah, especially as the king falls into most people's opening ranges. So the person who's got the strongest one of them is probably the one who's going to realize value the most. Whereas if the board came out 6, 7, 8 all diamonds, the person who's either got the diamonds or got the 9, 10 is winning, and they're always going to win. There's very little that can change that other than runner, small percentages. And in that position, it's because it's really static. You want to be value betting, but you need to be doing it in a really, you can only bet small because most people are folding. When people are calling, it's very polarized. Does that make so it's all of a sudden it's a really difficult ball to get proper value out, but when people hit it, they hit it strong. Whereas this one is, you could be betting with absolute abandon, certain that you're good, and then whatever the next card comes puts pay to that, and all of a sudden you're not sure where you're at. So winning the hand at this point, and this is the bit that I am now pausing on because I need to go back and double check. Winning the hand at this point is a good outcome.
Okay.
So I would heavily consider a donk bet, or more likely, you look at how often Heart Fraser's been raising the pot, re-raising, free betting and things like that, and work out if there's value in checking with the idea of check raising.
Right. Okay. I like that. What we actually do here is check, and then the original under the gun opener bets around under half the pot. So he bets 9,800 into the 25,000 pot, and the Chip leader, sorry, the big stack on our table, sorry, he calls the 9-800. So we've got, again, similar situations pre-flop where under the gun puts a bet in, we get a flat call from the big stack, and we are again left with a decision to make. We have top pair, 9 kicker. A check raise feels a bit big now, but surely we're not folding. Is this a call?
Yeah, I think the check raise is a shove, really, surely. Because what are you gonna raise it to make any difference? 30,000?
30,000.
And then you stack to
25,000.
And if you get called, you've got a less than 1 stack to pot ratio, and you kind of want to win the hands now. So shove and get the maximum amount of folds that you're going to get, rather than trying to get this isn't, as much as you might have the best hand and you want to get a little bit of value. What I think the 45,000 essentially that's in the pot now is it. You're looking for you're basically looking for an 8 or a 9, or if you're lucky, run a club, but I don't even know if you're going to get past the turn if it's an ace, to realise that flush. You are just looking for an 8 or a 9. You're blocking 2 of them, if that's a way of saying it. So there's only 2 8s left, 3 9s. A shove, I like, but I wouldn't be surprised if a solver said that that's a terrible result. But a call, 100% all day. And it's not a huge commitment of your pot. Yes, you have top pair, but we are also well aware that it's more than understandable that someone might have overcards. Both your villains might have overcards. Sorry, not overcards, over pairs. So you could be shoving into absolute carnage. But saying that, something like 9s, 10s, jacks could get folds, which is another good reason to be shoving in this position.
So I do elect to call. I'm just going to put you on the spot a bit though. If you were to jam here, like you were saying, could be an option. What hands that you beat would call you?
It wouldn't be for you're looking for calls. It would be that your equity realization on the next 2 streets is so low, despite having top pair medium kicker. It is, yeah, you're not doing that for worse hands to call. You're doing that because your hand is unlikely to stay the best hand. So you don't need to be thinking about it in terms of better hands calling, better hands folding, worse hands calling. You're thinking about it as any card higher than a 9 comes on the turn or river, and you're not in good shape. Even if you're, as soon as someone bets strong, you've got to assume that your 8's not good, and that's it. So it's much more about equity realization at that point.
So if we're just calling, then though, is it a bit of a bad call considering that we've got such a low equity realization?
No, because that's also the minimum risk, and you are building a pot that is sufficiently juicy that if you do hit another 8 or 9, you've got to be seen as the favorite at that point, and then it's much less dynamic because your 2 hair is almost certainly going to be the best regardless of the river, at which point then you turn into value and you start looking at what worse hands can I get calling here. So the ace 8 that's called you is perfect because you've got 8 9 there, and it's quite a hidden hand as well. I mean, at the moment you've got your range is the range that's hit that. So a jam does also contain all of your bluffs that's missed, as well as this hand, as well as some of your other better protected, stronger hands. So it will yield quite a decent amount of folds from all but the most unaware players, or the players that have got a good, strong hand.
I suppose as well, a jam, if we are looking for folds, a jam, we are the ones with pocket 2s, pocket 4s in our range. Obviously the pocket 8s as well. I think the other 2 players have also got pocket 8s in their range, but we've got all the sets in our range. So It could be a good time to jam if we wanted to get a hand like ace 8 out of the pot, king 8 possibly.
Yeah, it's also, if you jam, it's the kind of hand that's got backdoors, which is really helpful, albeit, you know, one of them's a double gut shot, but you've got backdoors. No, you haven't got backdoor straight. Ignore me. I was thinking of something else. But you've got the backdoor flush as well as other backdoors. You know, you've hit your pair, so you can now hit trips or two pair, and you know, even a boat. But that's not a consideration really. But similarly, where was I going to go? So you've also got, what was it? Oh, that's it. So you're also leaving open the cards that you most want to call you that have very little value but can't fold away. So for instance, if you did maybe not jam, but let's say you did a big rate, well, no, even if you jam, there are players that will call you with their ace king suited because they just can't throw it away, who think you're doing it with absolute air. It's not often, but people with overcards are going to be responding. So as much as the person who's at the moment in position, who was in middle position pre-flop, but then last to act, they're scary because they are just calling with no action. But then this is the kind of boards that the very, very strongest hands can kind of hide it when someone else is doing all the work for you. Because it when you're sitting in this kind of situation, you got aces or kings, or you've got a set of eights, it feels like I can't bet because it's such a low disconnected board that a bet here is really obvious that I've woken up with, you know, not only have I got a really strong pocket pair, but I've also got a board that even the very best of it's probably not connecting enough to see it through. I mean, there's a few hands that obviously are the nuts, but the most part, it's really difficult to connect with that board that beats aces or kings.
Yeah, sure.
Anywho, sorry,
Anyway,
bit long-winded.
No, it's good. Good thought process, and I think my mind there was the call was, well, I'm kind of playing a bit of a condensed range now. Like I've got the 8, but my kicker's not great. I've got 2 opponents, so I shouldn't be. You know, it lowers the value of my hand because I've got 2 opponents. And I guess I'm just hoping that the original opener, the under the gun, who's now bet the flop, has got 2 high cards, 2 overcards, and that it's been called by another 2 overcards that are just floating. And then maybe I've surprised them by, you know, flat calling as well.
I mean,
so I do. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, like, you say you've got the condensed range, but
Yeah,
this is the board for a condensed range. As much as normally you don't want to cap your range to not have the best of it. And yes, I do think your range is capped so that you haven't got aces, ace kings, things like that. This is exactly the kind of board that a condensed range is not too worried about. That you've got so much of the nut advantage. So even though they've got better range advantage and they're going to be winning more often across their range, you're going to get the most value out of the nuts because you are going to be sitting there with 8-4 or 4-2, etc. That's,
I mean it the other way around.
literally,
Though. I think I mean it more in that because I'm just flat calling, I'm kind of representing the hand I've got. I've got something. It's not massive. It's in the middle. It's got some showdown value, as opposed to having trip 8s or absolutely fuck all, like with ace 10 or something. You know, just 2 overcards. So I think I mean more, and maybe I've got the terminology wrong, but I think it's more that although my range is being perceived as condensed, if that makes sense. Like I'm flat calling, so I've got some showdown value, is what I mean.
I see what you mean. It's not a hand, it's not a flop that needs protection, and it's not a flop that benefits from any kind of big, solid, aggressive betting. You want to be leaving every single one of their bluffs in their hands.
Definitely.
And if I was sitting there with a pair of 8s, so I've got a set, I would very much as the hero, be playing this as passively as I possibly can. If it got 2 checks behind, which it didn't, but if it did, then I would be kicking myself for massively losing a bit of value. But I would be check calling all day long, because you want an ace to come. You want there to be a king. You want to give them some kind of value. You want to, I mean, ideally they're sitting there with ace 8 and then an ace comes, and then your set of eights is licking its lips. But it's that kind of thing where you actually want to play it as little and as slow as you can. So I do feel that the very nuts of your hands is still in there. I don't think they've defined it enough at all, especially as you're out of position and you're getting the incentive to just call, because this person who's in position keeps calling behind. They've called the flop, the call pre-flop, and now they're calling post-flop.
Okay.
Cool.
So the turn then comes. So the pot's now up at 54,600, and we've got 90,000 behind. The under the gun opener's got 100,000, and there's a 190 in the big stacks stack. The turn comes the 2 of diamonds, so there's no possible flushes going to hit anymore. There's, it's complete rainbow to this point, but the board has paired, giving another 2. Now this card, I kind of like this card. I thought this is going to help me out. I've got some 2s in my range. I had pocket 2s, or I might have stuff like ace 2. I think the under the gun opener may be playing ace 2 suited that he opened with, but if he did that, I find it hard to believe he would bet with bottom pair into 2 players on the flop. You'd probably just want to, you've got some showdown value, you'd probably want to see the showdown a bit cheaper. So I kind of felt this was a good card for our range more than anyone else's at this point. And I also felt like it might define their hands a bit more, because if they are sitting there with an overpair, which potentially either of them have got, particularly the under the gun opener, would he continue his aggression now that there's a good chance I've just hit trip 2s? Or, with 2 people that have called after him, if he continues aggression here, it starts to become a bit unbelievable, if that makes sense, that he would be playing a pair of aces even that strong on a board where we could quite easily have a 2 and have now just hit trips, But that in mind, what would you do here? So the action's on us. So just to recap, 54,000 in the pot. The board currently reads 8, 2, 4, 2, all rainbow, and we have the 8 and 9 of clubs. We are out of position. We're first to act, 2 players after us.
Yeah, I would be more concerned about a player with a wheel, which still, it's still only a draw and it's less likely to hit now, than perhaps the ace 2s. Not for any other reason, just because that's the only hand that I see either villain significantly improving at this point beyond what you have. Like they none of them have 8-4 for a better 2 pair than what's out there. I don't want to say that a 2 isn't in their range, but it's a very small part of their range.
It was
you're right.
Anyway. It's unlikely anyway, and now there's 2 of them on the board, it's even less likely. I don't think anyone's got 2.
I wouldn't put it past the big stack, the one who's in mid position, because some big stacks do like cally with absolutely wild hands. So it is a possibility, but they've not shown any life. I think they would let you know right now if they have that 2. I do also feel that having left all their bluffs in their hand, now's a time for us to say that pot's big enough and we need to kind of take it for ourselves. There's only one more card. We know that they're not going to be calling with draws and things, even though getting a call from a draw isn't the worst thing, but there is none. it might not necessarily be a shove or anything. It might be a quarter pot bet, but you've called already. So you've said, I was just in on the big blinds. That is a flop for the big blinds. If I've just going to check you and I've called. So it is highly feasible that because you were getting the odds by the time it was a bet and a call, you were getting much better odds to call that than if it was heads up. A 2 could be there. A 2 could be in your range.
Mm.
Not much, but you were in the big blind. Out of everyone, they must, if they're a decent player, they must be aware that that 2 hasn't missed you. You know, your range still includes that, despite calling the raise. So I'm not necessarily saying to donk, but if you're not donking, are you with top pair still only gunning for thin value? What information have we got that they are playing an over pair? So if we assume one of the villains does have an over pair, and at this stage I would put it on. I'd put it as not particularly strong over pair. So especially the one who's in position, they must be free betting because there's so many players to act behind them. They must be free betting aces, kings, queens. Honestly, at this level, probably jacks, tens as well. In fact, more reason to bet them hands because they need the protection of folds. And a pair of eights. And again, like a pair of eights is worrisome, but they'd need both the only 2 back. So there is a block. So we're not too concerned. There is a very slight chance of the 4s as well, but it's less likely.
The 4s is less likely. I don't think pocket 4s are in the opening range for an under the gun. According to GTO, it shouldn't be. I think it's 6s is minimum in this kind of position and these stack depths. And then the big stack who just called pre-flop, it would be a little bit of a shifty call with pocket 4s, with 5 people left after you to act. I think that would be a mistake as well. So I feel like pocket 4s, pocket 2s are out. Pocket 8s, that is within both their ranges. But like you say, that would have to be the only 2 8s left in the deck for them to have that. It feels like we're ahead unless someone's got the over pair. And the original opener could have the over pair. So to me, if I bet here, it's only going to get called by a better hand. It's going to get called by an over pair. I'm not folding, so it just leaves calling. I've got the showdown value. By calling as well, check calling, then that does leave bluffs in their range. It leaves the possibility that one of them's or both of them are opening and floating with 2 overcards, which we can say is part of their bluff range. So for me, this is a check and then a call.
For me, it's not so much that if you raise, you're only getting called by better hands. It's that your equity in this pot is still bad because you've got 2 opponents. The worst case scenario is that one's got ace 10, the other one's got king queen. So there is 12 other cards out there that can come and it's highly likely that one of them will come on the river because all the other lower cards are out as well, so there's even more available. Bit bunching.
If there's 12 cards that could beat me, and there's about 40 odd cards, 44 cards left in the deck, then there's more cards that will come that will keep me ahead if they're just on overcards.
Yeah. Oh, well, no, that's it. Because, sorry, it's not the cards they're holding that you're worried about. It's every card over a 10. So any 10, which there's 4 of, any jack, any king. Yeah, I mean, so it's 10s, jacks, kings, queens, aces.
Okay, times, and then there's 20. Still though, that's still just under half of the cards left to come. So even if you call it 50-50, in terms of overcards completing, I don't think we're in too bad a shape. I get your point. I'm not sure I can fully agree with it. I feel like this is just a time to obviously hope it doesn't come an overcard.
For me, it feels that this is a better way of me articulating it. If another card comes that favours you, so a 3, well, not even a 3 actually, because they could be playing ace 5.
Yeah.
So again, we've got doubts. So basically, there's even if we said it was 50-50, and then the next card comes out and it's let's say it's a 9, right, to give you 2 pair. You're not going to get value, I don't think. You're not going to, you've best case scenario, and then you try to raise. I think they'd both fold. I mean, if the 9 comes, you're playing 2 pairs, so you are beating that over pair. But if you don't, you're losing anyway to that over pair, and you would be beating the other player. Anything worse than that, you're beating for no extra value, right? So you've not gained any additional chips, apart from on the chance that you do hit an 8 or a 9, but there's just as much chance they hit whatever they're holding. But there's so many other cards that can come, anything over a 10, and as I said, even like a 3, even a 5 might give you enough doubt that you could fold if they shove.
Right. Okay, I see what you're saying.
And it's so become.
Then they'd end up being, it'll be like a polarized bet on the end that you're then in a really tough spot again. So you'd rather just end it now. I get it. I can see the logic.
Like you win over, what is that, coming up to 2/3 of your pot?
If they fold.
And I do understand that they might not, and it's a flip anyway, but the multi-way and out of position part is the thing that's killing us here.
I know, it's hard when it's multi-way. Well, I do check, as does the 2 other players. So we get 2 checks behind. And the river comes, one of those scare cards you mentioned, the 3 of hearts. For a final board with no flush available, 8-2, 4-2-3. So the ace 5 got there. I don't think either are holding pocket 3s for the same reason they're not holding pocket 4s. But the ace 5 got there, and obviously the over pair still beats us. But we just had 2 checks behind. Now, my first thought, and I'll obviously hand over to you in a sec, but my first thought is, if someone has got an over pair, it might just be that they're now playing cautiously because they know that a 2 is in our range, or even just that they bet the flop and got 2 callers, and are just like, right, I need to tighten up a little bit with my pocket kings or something, just try and get to showdown and see if I've won. So yeah, the checks on the turn doesn't guarantee me, I don't think, that I've now got the best of this hand. And yeah, now that you come to mention it, ace 5 is a little bit of a worry.
Yeah, for me, all over pairs gone.
You reckon?
Yeah, I just can't see it.
Okay.
I mean, Hart Fraser, what was he doing? If he's got an overpair on that flop, that bet's surely for value. So when a 2 comes, you're not suddenly scared that someone's got trip 2s. Like who's scared of trip 2s in that position? You continue your value bet. When it's then checked by both the big blind and under the gun, the person who's in positions gets to see this. They've just called the previous one. Like, what are they doing with an overpair allowing you to realize, get your two pairs in. Like, there's never a time that they're calling with an overpair.
Okay.
So yeah, the ace five is certainly a concern. I don't think it's enough of a concern.
Right.
It
might be a bit of a. It's probably an okay open ace. Ace five. The big stack call, like flat calling with 5 people left after him to act pre-flop with ace five. That's not so likely. I'm not sure of the calling ranges for middle position facing and under the gun open, but ace five doesn't seem like a qualifier.
To be fair, just to favour that, it does, as far as if I remember rightly, the ace five is the spike within that's normally surrounded by folds because of the wheel.
Okay.
Straight that it can hit.
Actually, ace five suited, I think, is a
yeah
3-bet, isn't it?
So well, yeah, but it's not a 100% free bet. So
okay.
A call would be, it's yeah. I'm not certain if it's just ace five or if it's ace four suited, but them hands that can make the wheel, if you're folding ace seven, ace eight suited, because there's been a under the gun raise, you do still have for balance a lower ace suited that you also raise to kind of protect as a balance to protect your aces when if you are free betting your aces or your ace king suited, because you're capable of doing it with a weak ace, because you're also capable of doing it with a strong ace. That's right. And it also opens up the hands that you want to call. So you want the kings and the queens to be calling, plus it can get better weak aces to fold. So it's another reason why you might want to raise it. Ace nine, ace eights are going to be folding. So yeah, so I feel that ace five is plausible, but I also feel it's still a tiny percent of their range. I think most of their ranges are surrounding all the Broadway cards, maybe some weak Broadway cards. Do I feel that ace eight got here? King eight, queen eight, jack eight. The lower we go, the less likely they're either raising under the gun or calling. But I wouldn't eliminate it.
Yeah, King I mean, suited eights. Suited eights aren't actually in the under the guns range at this stack depth. Surprisingly, I don't think there are any. I think it's suited nines upwards. So obviously he's not necessarily playing GTO, but if he was, he wouldn't actually have suited or unsuited eights in the under the guns range, and then it's just whether the middle position flat caller there has got eights, but I'm not sure. I don't know those charts yet, but it doesn't seem like there's many you'd call with. Maybe ace eight, possibly.
I believe that things like king eight are within the calling range because they block. You want to have that kind of hand in your calling range and your raising range because they do block the better hands that the opponent might have that they're raising with. So it means it's a tiny bit more likely, for instance, that under the guns raising with a pair of tens, which your king eight isn't doing too bad against, rather than ace king, because you're blocking the ace king very slightly. It's not a huge consideration, but if you need to get your bluffs, you're balancing bluffs from somewhere, it's part of that sits alongside your suited connectors. You need some blockers as well, and king eight is a very good example of that, because you're much more likely to hit the eight because it's a free card. Like, your opponents are much less likely to hold the eight, so you can hit that, and you are blocking the good hands the good strong hands that they might hit with. It's, from my understanding, the solvers put that together just because it's not overly easy to manufacture this balance from too many places, but it's also a great hands to free bet and fold with as well, because it actually has pretty all right equity realization, because it's not overly strong, but it can hit really well and it can perform fairly decently, because you will also fold every time that it's crap. So it's not a terrible hand to be playing. It's when you're playing your ace 10 offsuit that your equity realization is terrible, and people think that it's a decent ace, and they get themselves in all kinds of trouble. Whereas the king eight, you fold, or in hands like this, you just keep calling behind, and it turns out they're massive. And that's kind of my lingering feeling here, that we've got to the river, we feel we're fairly all right, but it is what you said. This is now. I don't feel there's any thin value to be had.
No, I'd be petrified to bet here. We're on the river, 2 players left. I think, to me, this is a check, and then call if they go all in, then I might have to fold.
Well, that's the reason why.
Which is going to be gutting. But if they don't, I don't know. I don't know. It depends who goes all in. If the under the gun goes all in, it doesn't feel right. Even if they went all in, that is what they're not scared of me having a 2 at all. Like if you had a pair of aces even now, right, and 2s are in my range, I could even have a set. Are you seriously just going to jam all in on the river, so confident that you've got it, that you're going for max value because you've just got a pair of aces, when there's an easy set, an easy trip 2s on the board? There's the straight there on the board now. There's all the sets that have been there from the start for our range. A jam here I would be really suspicious of a jam, and probably more so than just a pot size bet or a half pot size or 2/3 pot size bet. I think a jam I would be really. I might still fold because I might be scared, but it doesn't necessarily mean they've got it. I think that would be quite suspicious.
What I'm feeling in this position is work out what you would do to both a 1/4 size pot and a 3/4 size pot raise, and from which position, and then work back from that to see if the value is in you making that bet. So you take the bet away from them, because it's much less likely that they're going to shove, because it gets rid of.
So like a defensive bet, like bet 25,000 in the hope that they just, oh shit, they've bet now, maybe I'll just call with my aces to try and.
Well, I've eliminated aces. I've eliminated that completely. What I'm worried about in this position, what I'm worried the most from checking, is that someone who bets 40,000 and the pot is pretty much 55,000, someone who bets 40,000 is getting a fold from you when you've got the best hand. And that is not ideal, because you've left all their bluffs in there that have allowed them to get that. And then if we go back through the action, the person who's in middle position, who is the undergun pre-flop raiser, they raised post-flop, c-bet, and then they shut up shop. And nothing's happened on the river that's changed any of that. So I would be extremely surprised if they do anything. I feel that they're done with the hand. There's 2 people in it, they're out, and they're in middle position as well. So they're always in the mix of the action. Like the action never finishes with them in a way, because if what it now need to be, if you check to them, it'll be, and they check again, they're all the same. I feel that they're kind of out this hand. I can't see them suddenly putting their head up and wanting value when they were checking that turn, because if you've got value, you lead. It's the person who's in late position that now has seen 2 checks in front of them. They've checked again. If there's a check, they've got a bet. Right. I mean, they're the big stack. They are the ones who can afford to lose 55,000.
Oh yeah.
I would be betting that on that kind of board with ace high. And if that means that you're folding your top pair, you have to do something about that. You either need to readjust.
What is the doing something about it? Do you think I need to make a bet here? And if so, how big are you going?
Well, it's not necessarily that you need to make a bet. It's about, would you fold to a 3/4 size pot raise? A 1/4 size pot, we're calling all day of the week.
I don't think I can. I'm really suspicious of any kind of big bet here, or any bet really. I mean, the only a smaller bet, you'd be like, damn it, ace 5 has got there. There's no twos. I don't think I've got a set. Ace 5 is scary. The over pair, I don't think would bet anymore. I think the over pair would just be like, you know what, there's a few things out there now. I'm just gonna check. I think the ace 5 would bet. That is scary. But also, I think a hell of a lot of bluffs would bet, especially from the big stack, which is, you know, he could be floating that with, I don't know, loads of hands, loads of overcards, and he's just seen some checks. And if, like you say, if he gets 2 checks in front of him on the river after 2 checks in front of him on the turn, he's probably thinking, yeah, I'm betting big here and get these losers out the pot.
Yeah, that 3, as much as it completed an ace 5 straight, the last street went check, check, check. So no one is sitting on that hoping that someone's betting. You're an absolute fool if you're sitting on that. So you're betting this. So if it goes check from you, check from the initial raiser, the mid position, who was under the gun, sorry, under the gun, and gets to the person who's in position, he can bet knowing that that's not a consideration. He can bet knowing that pretty much anything. What are you called? He knows that the most likely hand is that someone's sitting there with 8x, which is what you're sitting there with, and you're not, and it's not ace x or even king x, because you're not putting your neck on the line and giving it some value.
It would be a good spot for him to bluff for sure.
So the next thing would be, if you do a small bet, a blocking bet, are your opponents strong enough that they can still re-raise that bluff? You're the big blind. This is your board. Every part of it is within your range. You're the only person who's got every single one of the nutted hands in this.
Yeah. So we've got the nut advantage.
And you put out a small, cheeky little bet, quarter pot, maybe even 20%, like proper cheeky little bet. I would feel that it would take a very, very good player or a very good hand to re-raise that, to raise that. Sorry.
And then you're kind of asking a question, and you're either gonna, that's it. I see what you're saying. So it's a defensive bet. You're guaranteeing almost that unless someone's got the nuts here, they're just going to call, and then you've managed to only lose the amount that you've decided you want.
I do feel that you'd get folds from 9s, 10s, 10-8, Jack 8. Now, I don't feel that they're overly likely holdings, but I do feel there are better hands that would fold here as well.
Yeah.
Very few. But all the same, it's just, that's where I'd be pitching it. And it's not necessarily that I would be betting, but my feeling would be that I would get enough information from that small bet that I'd be able to perform better, even though it'll cost me more chips. It might yield what I want, which is call, and then we get to see the cards, or it gets the folds that I was looking for, or it gets a massive bet that I think, all right, well, you must have been sitting on something, or you've suddenly got a bit of life. Anyway, let's see what happens.
So I decide to check, rightly or wrongly. And then the original pre-flop aggressor goes big with a 41k bet into the 54k pot. The big stack, who's been in the pot all the way up till now, decides to now fold. And the decision is now on us. So this is kind of, not what we wanted. I think a jam.
Oh, really?
It was.
You
like this?
I was waiting to say this is the best possible outcome.
You reckon?
Genuinely think this is the best possible outcome. I could be massively wrong here, and I got a bad feeling about it. But my feeling on this was, I said with quite confidence that any of the good hands that the under the gun player had, they capped, they got rid of on that turn check. I just can't see why you don't see bet for value, because you've already shown that you're calling. So if you've got a hand that's better than 8, like a pair of 8s, why aren't you getting value? There's nothing else. You're not scared of the straights. You're not scared of the quads or sets and stuff, because what you weren't scared to bet originally. Don't see bet if you're scared of that kind of stuff, but you did see bet and you got calls. All right, okay, you say, oh, I've got information, but then a two comes that, like, that's what are you worried about that suddenly completed? What were you what kind of bluffs were you playing? Or sorry, what strength was you playing that you're now scared of that too? Come on. There is so few hands that two improved, that your strength that's beating a pair of eights in this position is just not carrying on. Like, you don't wait for your players to catch up. You know, even if you are playing a set of eights, you're still vulnerable. Like, there's still quads. All right, maybe they're playing quads, and at which point you just pay quads off. I don't care about. I'm sick of quads. I've seen quads 4 times this week. I do not need to see more quads. And obviously, I've lost every single time. I
might be. This might be monsters under the bed, right? But if he had an overpair, could it be that he's like confidently bet the flop? Yeah, I'm ahead. I've got my overpair. The two comes. He's like, oh, I'm gonna check this. And then the guy, you know, the big stack, then checks, and then he's got his confidence back. He's like, okay, everyone's checked the turn now. Like, no one's got the two. I'm happy to go again with my pocket kings, pocket queens, or whatever.
No,
there's a little risk. There is a little risk of that, though, isn't there? Like, just him kind of, turns got me a bit, and then actually everyone's checked. I'm just going to bet it now.
Because the three made some straights. Like, the person who's scared of that two completing something for someone,
be scared of the straight.
Would be scared of the straight, or they're still scared that they're being beaten by something else. Like, they're still losing.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Now, my confidence is probably misplaced, and I certainly wouldn't be raising this. This is only ever a call. I would not be risking the rest of my chips.
Big chunk of my stack, and
but what you're getting for your money is massive.
Yeah.
Like, let's imagine you get, let's not imagine, you're getting 2.5 to 1. It's a bit just shy of that, 2.5 to 1. And you got top pair. I think enough of their range, and this is purely on the check on the turn. Okay, so I am gonna have to die by that. But the check on the turn, I can't imagine an overpair. I just can't imagine an overpair checking that.
No, it does feel less likely. I do agree. Like, when you explain it, it does seem less likely after that turn.
It could be that they got the call. It could be that they're not worried about you because they get to see how you act every single time. Or they are worried about you, but they get to see how you act because they got position. And they were genuinely worried about the player behind them on that turn. The player behind them just checked as well. And they're like, okay, well, the freezer brick, I got the information I want on the last street, so I'm going to come back out betting. There is a chance, but you're a plonker if that's the case. You can't be scared of people because they called what was relatively a small bet. If you've got the best hand or one of the best hands, because it's a dry rainbow flop, and then it pairs the board, but it's a 2 and it's rainbow still, you've got to try and get value. Otherwise, every single hand you got, you're scared. As I said, monsters under the bed. Like, at which point, shove. You know what I mean? Like, if you think he's a monsters under the bed overpair player, shove. Or you call because he hasn't got an overpair. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't think there's a fold here at all.
No, fold seems too weak. How can we go all the way to this river and then fold when a 3 comes on the river? You know, the only thing that does is complete a possible ace-5 holding that he had all along, and bet with the gut shot on the flop. It feels like there's enough just unpaired overcards in his range that there seems to be way more bluffs in his range at this point than there are hands that beat me.
Yeah, and I think
it is a call, isn't it? It is a call.
I think the bet size is key as well. If you felt that you had an overpair and you're betting for value, you've got no reason to believe that you're calling anything. So you bet small. right? And if you suddenly come out shoving, then it's like, okay, I mistook that. I've put in the smallest raise, so my risk is low and I can actually fold my overbear if you were that way inclined. But you certainly don't bet 3/4 pot with the intention of getting calls. Now, that doesn't mean they haven't got an overpair, because players just want to win the pot. There are players that want to just bet and win and feel that they've put closure on this hand and they've won it and they've done what they needed to, who don't understand how much money they've left on the table by not doing a small bet that gets called by 8-9. Who might not ever think that there's actually a whole ton of hands in your range that would call a small bet who would fold to this.
Yeah, even like 5-4, 6-4. You know, like they're even in there. All of the eights.
Yeah. So there should always have been value bets at every stage. I don't like the 3/4 bet. I just think the 3/4 bets of can you please fold to me bet.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's nothing to polarize here either. There's no massive hands with only a few bluffs that he needs. There's loads of bluffs and loads of mediocre hands. Like a pair of aces on that board is pretty mediocre. So this isn't a polarized betting range, so it should be either small or overbet, because you valued the bluff. Well, do you even overbet? Depends how much you value the folds. But at the same time, betting 3/4 or pot for me would be trying to say, oh, I haven't got absolute air or the best of it. We've not even considered that feeling. They certainly have never. They certainly ain't got eights. They certainly ain't got quads. Well, I don't think so anyway. Anywho.
Okay, so we do call.
Good.
Okay, so you'll be happy to know. All right, we're going to flip his cards over. You've got two guesses. What cards has he got?
King queen off.
Yeah.
Okay.
King queen off. Is that you're just having one guess?
No. I'm going to quickly run through. I'm running through some other scenarios. So what would you bet on that kind of flop? King queen is definitely feeling it. Or yeah, I'm going to go king queen ace jack. I'm going to try and just go for the Broadway hands, but I am kind of just saying any of Broadway.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's any of the Broadway, isn't it? If we're thinking over cards.
You turn over 8-9.
The villain flips over ace queen of spades. So he was bluffing, and we take down a lovely big fat pot. Okay.
Yeah.
It was a bit monsters under the bed in there, like for me, but that makes perfect sense. You know, he had the two overcards all the way along. He tried it with the flop, you know, got two callers, shit. The turn comes, all right, I'm giving up. The river comes, he's like, I'm, you know, probably behind here. I need to bluff to win it. He's bet a pretty chunky bet, you know, 3/4 pot with his bluff, and we had the balls to catch it.
Feels so good. I always have that little inkling feeling of I've been speaking with, when I do that with such confidence, and this is a real ADHD personality of mine, is that, oh, what if I go into it with abandon and all of a sudden he's got, you know, a set of eights. But no, like it felt right. The whole pattern of play is something we've seen players do time and time again. They bluff the c-bet, okay, because they think that they can just bluff with abandon c-bet. Oh, I meant c-bet here, so I will. It's a crappy board, no one's going to have hit it, not even thinking the big blind is calling this.
I don't think they're supposed to c-bet that flop, in all honesty, especially not with a three-way pot and two players left to act. I think they actually made an error c-betting on the flop, if I'm honest. I don't think that's the right board. I think if that was a 10 jack queen king or ace with a 2-4, then they maybe can bet with some frequency, but not actually that high, considering there was two other players in the pot. This particular board, I don't think they should have c-bet it at all, like, or a very low frequency.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of them times where if they'd have delayed c-bet, I reckon they would have got folds for the exact same value. If it had gone check on the flop, and then the two came out and you checked again, I don't think you would have checked again, but let's say you did. I reckon that bet at that point, same value, even though you don't think they got the two, you're thinking exactly what you said. You know, that was the wrong kind of ball to see bet, but now you are playing your overpair, and now is a good time to say, okay, well, I've had enough. I'm gonna get a bit of value or something like that. I'd say it would have been a lot scarier. Plus, there's only one more card to come, so you got much less chance of improving. But also, it's just more how the dynamic can change depending on where they choose to put their bluffs. And as you said, that flop weren't the place. It weren't a good place for them to bluff. And then it was like, oh no, everyone called. And then it really was like, oh, everyone just checked. Well, I've got to do something now, haven't I? Like, I can't win this hand just with ace high.
And fair play, you know, some people might have folded an 8 there, the pair of 8s. You know, they may well have done that.
Yeah, I do really love that we picked out. It's really it's really important which player took the initiative on the river there. If it was the player who's the big stack, last two acts, that I probably would have talked myself into getting on board with a fold, because their range was uncapped.
It could be anything.
Oh, they could have done. It could have represented so much. But then this is an example where some players are just so. Let's just check call, check call. Hope we hit something. When we don't, all right, okay, fair enough. And they probably saw the 3/4 size pot bet raise, and not raise bet, and thought, oh, that's a lot. I'm gonna fold, and not thinking. Yeah, you're
not thinking what's he got here. Hang on.
Why would you do that with value?
But then potentially he was calling down with a similar kind of hand. He was just floating along. You know, I've got ace 10. I've got ace jack. I've got 2 overcards. Let's call the flop, because really he only called the flop. And maybe if he had something like ace 10 of clubs or whatever, you know, he's got the backdoor nut flush draw. He's thought, I'll float it. The turns come. He's got no chance for a flush anymore. He's checked and then folded the river. I think that was just a bit of a. I think you were right. He's just calling with not a great deal, hoping to hit something.
I'd love it if you found out he folded like king 8 or something.
That would be great, wouldn't it?
You never know. But yeah, good hand. Really loved it.
All right. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, this went surprisingly well.
Yeah.
Normally when I've got that much gusto into what I feel a player's got, there'll be something really obvious that I've missed. It's like,
no, you nailed it, mate.
Tain, have you not even considered this hand? The most likely hands they've got that they would have had the entire time. You know, like ace 8. And I'm like, oh God, of course they would have got here with ace 8. You know, but no, we're good. Nice. I'm happy.
I taught Trixie how to play poker yesterday, Tain. Did I tell you? Oh,
nice. She smashing it. She's probably the person who was beating me with them quads the other day. Yesterday.
Just for our listeners, Trixie's my 6-year-old daughter. So I taught her the first 5 minutes was just, you put one chip in each, you get dealt the 2 cards, the 5 cards are dealt, and then you turn your cards over, and whoever's like got a bigger pair or 2 pair or whatever wins. And we did that for a bit, and then she was getting it. And then I said, all right, now when we've dealt the 5 cards, you get the choice. You can either check or bet, right? And I taught her that bit. And then I said, if the other person bets, if you want to stay in the hand, you've got to call it, or you can fold. And then I even introduced a pre-flop betting round as well. So that was as far as I went. So we put in a blind each, get dealt 2 cards, round of betting, 5 cards are dealt, final betting, and we was only doing it that if you could check or bet, and if the person bet, you couldn't then re-raise. It was you call or fold. I just thought I'd keep it really simple. But she was all right. She was getting it, and a couple of times she bluffed, and I was teaching her how to bluff. And I thought, wow, like she's got it. And then I bluffed on the river, and then she called, and then flipped over like air. And I beat her with like jack high or something. And she's like, I bluffed. And it's like, oh, no, you didn't. You just called me with fuck all.
Oh,
But yeah, bless her.
swing
No,
and
I
a
mean,
miss.
good start. I mean, we only played for like 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes, and it was really cool to teach her that. It was a really nice thing to do. So she's
Nice.
maybe slightly young at 6, but she's to get in the concept of, you've got to make a certain hands beat other hands, and you've got some, control over how many chips you put in the pot,
Cool.
which is a good start.
Yeah, I mean, I love hearing the stories about you and Trixie, but it is a really passive aggressive way to finish the pod, basically telling me your 6-year-old's better than me already.
I didn't say he was better, probably just like an equal footing.
Cheers, John. See what you did there. All right. Okay. I'm gonna have to come around and give her a dead leg or something. Put her back in her place. Sorry, Trixie. She's lovely, but
dead leg.
Dead leg. Sorry, granddaddy.
All right. Well, look, thanks for listening, everybody. We hope you enjoyed the pod. Tain, as always, that's been a great bit of learning and a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks very much. Loved it. Cheers.
Take care all.